Welcome to the May 3rd, 2021 meeting of the Arlington County Planning Commission. The Planning Commission advises the County Board on matters pertaining to planning and development in our community. Good evening. I'm Jim Lantelmi, Chair of the Commission. This is the first of two evenings scheduled for our public hearings. Tonight, we will be hearing a presentation on the application for 2001 South Clark Street, site plans number 11 and number 458, and PDSP 454, and related matters in Crystal City. At our Wednesday, May 5th meeting, we will be hearing the Vernon Street duplex, site plan number 461. If you're here for that item, note that it will not be discussed tonight. There's some items that I'm required to share with you now. For the safety of our staff and residents, we're holding this meeting virtually. Welcome to our commissioners, county staff, applicants, and community members who are all joining remotely. We're legally authorized to hold this virtual meeting based on the governor's executive orders, legislation adopted by the Virginia General Assembly, and the county board's continuity of operations ordinance that was adopted in March of 2020. Before we begin, a few specifics to orient everyone to this virtual environment. Tonight's meeting is available as a broadcast with closed captioning on Comcast Xfinity channels 25 and 1085, Verizon Fios channels 39 and 40, and the county website. Audio of tonight's meeting is available via phone. If commissioners, presenters, or speakers lose internet connectivity during tonight's meeting, please reconnect with us by phone. You can use the number provided in the Teams invite, which is 347-973-6905, with a conference ID of 594-959-432#. And registered speakers have received Ms. Johnson's telephone number in their speaker registration confirmation. For other presenters and speakers joining us through Microsoft Teams, please keep your phones and devices muted until you're called upon. And please turn off sound to any other devices around you to minimize interference. When called upon to speak, you're the one who must unmute yourself by clicking on the microphone icon that is located on your meeting's command bar. The moderator does not have the ability to unmute you. If you're dialing in by phone, please press *6 to unmute. The commissioners know the drill on how to be recognized. Use the hand raise function. Public speakers, you'll be called upon by the clerk at an assigned time. Pre-registration to speak at today's hearing was required, and we are not able to accommodate additional speakers. Public comment will take place within the same time frames as we would provide during our in-person meeting, which means speakers have 3 minutes to comment as individuals and 5 minutes to speak if representing an organization. A speaking timer will be displayed on the screen by the clerk. If you're dialing in by phone and unable to see the screen, we will provide an audible warning when 30 seconds are remaining. You will be muted when your time is concluded. The meeting chat is active for presenters or commissioners who need technical assistance only. Do not use the meeting chat for discussion, public comment, questions about agenda items, or requests for more information. All public comments must be shared verbally for the record during the signed public testimony period. Finally, this is a public forum. Tonight's meeting is being recorded and posted to the county's website. All information associated with tonight's meeting, whether written or spoken, is subject to the Virginia Freedom of Information Act requirements. We can move on now. Madam Clerk, could you please call tonight's item?
Yes, thank you. Our first and only item this evening has multiple parts, as you know, is the Crystal Plaza 1, 2001 South Clark Street, as the chair has mentioned. The first item under that subject matter is Z-2619-19-1, the rezoning, CCBP-M-1, the Crystal City Block Plan, Site Plan number 11, Site Plan number 454, Site Plan number 458, and an ordinance of vacation to vacate. We have Adam Watson and Matt Matuzak to present this item this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Watson and Mr. Matuzak. The screen is yours.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, I can, and I can see your postings on the screen.
Okay, great. Okay, yeah, thank you. This is the Crystal Plaza 1 2001 South Clark Street project and the associated items. So we will run through these. So as the clerk mentioned, we do have all these items. I did just want to remind everybody that we have item F, which is the subject of a separate staff report, which is the vacations of easements that go with these, but we have a rezoning, a Crystal City block plan, a site plan amendment for site plan 11, the PDSP amendment, and the new site plan for the new development of this project. So jumping right into it, this is block M in Crystal City. In the sector plan, it's identified as the entertainment district. It's bounded to the north by 20th Street. On the east, you have Crystal Drive, to the south, 23rd Street, and then to the west, we have Richmond Highway. It also is the approximate boundary of the existing Site Plan 11, which was originally approved in the early 1960s. So this site is on the northern end of that block, 2001 South Clark Street, which is an existing 11-story office building that was constructed in the early 1960s. The site is zoned CO today, and the GLUP designation existing is High Office Apartment Hotel, High OAH, and it's also within the Crystal City Coordinated Redevelopment District. So the applicant, the first thing that's being proposed is a rezoning of this entire site area to CO Crystal City from CO. This is a very simple slide. This just is to say that the proposed zoning is consistent with the GLUP designation and is supported by staff. With the rezoning, there is a requirement for a block plan to be submitted, and the applicant has provided that. It provides supplemental guidance to ensure that the proposed new buildings do not preclude the sector plan vision for the block, and that infrastructure continues to function over periods of redevelopment. Site Plan 11, the amendment to this is to remove approximately 104,000 square feet of site area to make way for the new site plan. Of course, the applicant is requesting to maintain or keep the existing density and parking, which is on site today, and a statistical summary of that is provided here at the bottom of the screen. As you can see, the change is the loss of the existing office tower, which is approximately 158,000 square feet, and then 505 parking spaces. The new development proposal that we'll be speaking mostly about tonight is comprised of 2 new residential buildings with ground floor retail. The west tower is shown here on the far right hand of the screen. That's 2000 South Bell Street. It's proposed to be 250 feet tall with 338 units, approximately 12,000 square feet of retail space on the ground floor. The east tower, which would also be known as 2001 South Bell Street, is 200 feet tall, 420 units, and about 10,000 square feet of retail space proposed. The overall density for this project is proposed at 6.9 FAR. These 2 buildings are proposed to be LEED Gold with bird-friendly materials installed in accordance with our updated policy. We have underground parking beneath the entire site, a total of 302 parking spaces. The proposed ratio for residential is 0.32 spaces per dwelling unit, and for retail, it's 1 space per 494 square feet. Compact parking is a de minimis amount above the 15% threshold at 17%. With this project, we're also going to be getting the Pedestrian Passageway, which is a 7,200 square foot open space that I'll talk about more a little bit. A replacement of the underground. There is a segment of underground that runs beneath this site. And then lastly, and crucial to the vision of the sector plan, a new segment of Clark Bell Street or South Bell Street that will be bisecting the site between these 2 towers. So this image shows you the proposed site layout. We have the west tower on the left-hand side of the screen and the proposed east tower on the right-hand side. And again, bifurcating this site is the new Clark Bell Street segment, as well as an interim connection that doglegs to page left that connects to the existing South Clark Street. As you can see in the yellow, there are proposed protected bike lanes in both directions with this proposal. In terms of uses, the retail on the ground floor is shown in red. The green area is the open space of the 7,200 square feet for the pedestrian connection. The residential lobby entrances are towards the middle of the screen, are proposed off of South Bell Street for each tower. We have loading on the south side of each building, and then one garage entrance for the unified garage beneath proposed access in the east tower off of the proposed alleyway. Jumping into our zoning regulations, this is in CO Crystal City. This district allows the county board to approve additional density upon finding that the project furthers the goals, policies, and recommendations in the sector plan. The district also establishes regulation on a number of things, which I've listed here: use mix, height, architectural features, bulk plane angle, etc. And the key takeaway here is that the proposal is consistent with the zoning regulations for this district. There are a couple of modifications that the applicant is requesting, which are listed on the right-hand side of the screen. The additional density I will speak about in a little bit when we get to the PDSP proposal. The bulk plane angle is a requested modification, and the applicant has provided a shadow study that meets the zoning ordinance requirements that shows that adequate sunlight is maintained on Center Park during the equinoxes. For tower separation, this is for the east tower only. The applicant has also met the zoning requirements for this. They provided a block plan scenario in which DWEC, which is the property owner to the south, has agreed that its Crystal Plaza apartments with future redevelopment will achieve the 60 feet horizontal separation between those two towers as shown in the block plan. Lastly, we have some parking modifications to reduce parking to the ratios that I mentioned on the previous slide, and this is consistent with our off-street parking guidelines. And we also support it given the proximity to transit and the TDM conditions to which the applicant has agreed. Jumping into our Crystal City sector plan, this is the key policy guidance providing planning guidance for this site. As you can see on the right-hand side of the screen, these two maps show you the approximate location of 2001 South Clark Street. I won't read off all of the sector plan goals that are listed here on the slide, but this is the key criteria that staff has been examining when examining this site plan proposal. So the first thing I wanted to jump into were a number of things that we talked about through LRPC and the SPRC process, and how these aspects of the proposal relate to the Crystal City sector plan and to the zoning ordinance. And the first thing I wanted to talk about was the build to lines, or the RBLs and streetscapes for South Bell Street, which again is the street segment bisecting these two towers. So this table at the top summarizes what the sector plan guidelines are for each criteria matter. And then I also have on the far right column what is proposed. So just going line by line here, you can see that the build to line, the overall width was recommended to be 80 feet, and the applicant is proposing 76.5 feet. So a 3.5 foot deficit. Curb to curb width, the sector plan recommended 48 to 54 feet, and the applicant is proposing 47.5 feet. With sidewalks, there was a recommendation for 12 to 16 feet, and we are getting 14 feet with this, so there is no deviation there. And I would also add that we've been able to achieve 8-foot clear sidewalks, which actually exceeds the 6-foot clear recommendation in the sector plan. In terms of travel lanes, we are compliant there. We have 2 southbound travel lanes and 1 northbound travel lane. On-street parking is not part of this proposal. It has been replaced by that bottom line there, which you see, which is the bike lanes, which was a large discussion that we had throughout SPRC. The sector plan did recommend a one-way bike lane and 2 different alternative scenarios that were shown. However, after much discussion with the community and the SPRC, we were able to work out agreement with JBG to have 2-way protected 5-foot bike lanes each direction, which I think is a great benefit. So there are some deviations from the sector plan. However, staff is supportive of those given the fact that the overall build to line width is within about 3.5 feet. And again, about a half a foot of what's called for in terms of curb to curb width. And we really think that what is proposed here is going to be able to sufficiently serve all of the transportation modes that we're anticipating to have on this street segment. Jumping in next, I wanted to talk a little bit about the pedestrian passageway, or the open space that's coming with this site. As you can see from these images, the design of this space really evolved over the course of our public community engagement process. It really, I think, took a great step in a right direction to become something that's much more green, something that is much more biophilic. Again, the applicant is agreeing to construct, maintain, and provide access to this space, 7,200 square feet. We find that the design of this space is completely consistent with the sector plan guidance for open space 8. That guidance is shown on the table there at the bottom right-hand side of the screen, a park with trees, gardens, and benches along a path connecting the park to Crystal Drive. I do want to say that the pedestrian passageway was not envisioned by the sector plan. A small portion of open space 8 is being provided in this passageway. As you can see at that locator map at the bottom of the screen, the overlapping nature of these two spaces. Another very important thing, this space is not being provided in lieu of open space 8. This would be in addition to it. So again, overall, we're looking at a net increase in the amount of ultimate open space provided on the north side of this block. Next, I wanted to talk about the underground connection to the existing shops. And again, just walking through the iterations that we looked at as we went from LRPC into SPRC. We began with an original proposal that actually was not underground, but took you through that pedestrian passageway that I just showed you on the previous slide that's on the far left-hand side of the screen. After that, JBG worked with staff to provide a revised proposal to that, which was fully undergrounded, although it was open in the garage. And now we have, with this final design, taking back some community and staff input, the applicant has put forward a fully enclosed, fully undergrounded, climate-controlled connection to provide that access, that continuous access from 23rd Street and the shops up to the metro station. So, you know, the underground is an internal pedestrian concourse system which provides access to shopping and transit in a climate-controlled environment. We feel that this has met the guidance provided in the sector plan, and again, was something that really progressed in a positive way over the course of SPRC. I would like to turn now to briefly summarize the PDSP amendment. This is the applicant's proposal in terms of earning that additional density to achieve 6.9 FAR overall. So I'm just going to run down the list here. For sustainability, again, we have LEED Gold. We have a 12% energy efficiency over the base. We're expecting Energy Star appliances, WaterSense fixtures, bird-friendly materials, again, installed in accordance with our recently updated policy. Affordable housing, I put this in blue because this is new for those of you who were at our LRPC SPRC wrap-up meeting last month. We are going to be receiving 7 CAFs offsite at River House, the James building at River House. Which would be available to those earning up to 60% AMI. We do have a majority of family size units, so it'd be 4 2-bedroom units and 3 1-bedroom units. And I just wanted to note that this is again in addition to the $3.36 million base contribution that will be made with this project for affordable housing. In terms of open space, I already mentioned the pedestrian passageway. Again, a new item since our last wrap-up meeting is approximately $81,000 contributed towards public open space improvements in Crystal City generally. Community facilities, this is the operational support over the course of 5 years. It's $1.25 million total towards a limited service public library in the Mall 4, that's 1901 South Bell Street, right across the street from this project. In terms of public art, we are anticipating an additional $75,000, so a total of $155,000 towards public art in Crystal City. Transportation infrastructure, we have intersection improvements for Richmond Highway and 20th Street, and again, the construction and easements for that new segment of South Bell Street or Clark Bell Street. And then lastly, construction and public access to the replaced underground segment. In terms of community engagement, we had a lengthy community engagement process, which began in July of last year. We had an online engagement for the LRPC, followed by 2 virtual LRPC meetings. Beginning in this new year, we had online engagement opportunity for the site plan, followed by 2 virtual site plan review committee meetings, and we had our virtual joint SPRC LRPC wrap-up meeting just last month. So we are now here at the commission meetings. The Transportation Commission did consider this item as an action item and voted, I believe, 9-0 to approve. Per the county manager's recommendation, we are here at Planning Commission tonight, and we do have this as an action item for the Housing Commission on the 6th. This is expected to be heard by the county board on May 15th, Saturday morning. So staff's recommendation is to approve all the items per the county manager's recommendation. We think that this proposal is consistent with the zoning ordinance and the general land use plan. It advances several key planning goals from the sector plan, including creating a high quality public realm and open spaces that strengthen the sense of place, providing a mix of uses, enhancing multimodal access and connectivity, incorporating sustainable design into the buildings, and ensuring Crystal City's long-term economic sustainability. We also believe that the PSDP Amendment provides a well-balanced and holistic community benefits package that directly supports the goals and objectives identified in the sector plan. Lastly, we also find that the vacations associated with this item are substantially in accordance with the comprehensive plan of the county. And I did want to mention before I turn it over that we are working on a couple conditions still. I don't expect substantive changes on these. However, we are still wordsmithing, and I just wanted to make everybody aware of that in advance when they take a look at the staff report. So thank you, and this concludes staff's presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Watson. Madam Clerk, do we have an applicant presentation?
I believe we do. Kedrick?
And I think Catherine Hennigan from JBG Smith is going to give this presentation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Well
Hey,
done.
everyone. I will share my screen. So, members of the Planning Commission, thank you for having us tonight to talk about our application for 2000 and 2001 South Bell Street. Tonight, we'll be providing an overview of our project focusing on these 9 main topics, the bulk of which Adam just gave a really great overview of as well. And so getting into the existing conditions to help orient everyone, the subject site is located in the heart of Crystal City. It's adjacent to the intersection of Route 1 and 20th Street. And on this slide, it's outlined in blue. It sits on Block M, which is bounded by Route 1, 20th Street, 23rd Street, and Crystal Drive. As we can see from this aerial shot, the site is currently improved with 2001 Richmond Highway, a vacant office building that will be demolished with this project and is also adjacent to a surface parking lot. And here we just have some imagery of the existing architecture on the site to help orient everyone, the existing office building as well as the surface parking lot in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen, and some additional vantage points from other parts of the block. So getting into, getting into a project overview of what we are proposing. So overall, we're proposing about 700,000 residential square feet divided between the 2 towers. There are 338 units proposed at 2000 South Bell and 420 units proposed at 2001 South Bell. And the 2 towers will sit above about 22,000 square feet of retail. And 1 garage will serve both buildings, which will have 247 residential spaces total and 302 parking spaces total, counting visitor spaces as well as retail spaces. So this slide shows the overall site organization, and we can see the first section of realigned Clark Bell Street bifurcating the site with 2000 South Bell on the west, adjacent to Route 1, and 2001 South Bell on the east side of the site. Retail entries are marked in blue along 20th Street. Residential entries will be on Bell Street, shown here marked in orange, Loading is shown in red along the alley and the connector road, and parking will be accessed in the parking entry off of the alley for both buildings. We've also proposed a pedestrian connection highlighted here in green to the east of 2001 South Bell to increase the porosity of the southern half of the block and also to connect into the existing plaza adjacent to 220 20th Street. So just taking a look at the proposed architecture for the two towers, here we have some renderings of 2000 South Bell, and this building is characterized by an articulated glass and metal panel facade that steps down to a one-story podium, and the design also incorporates a four-floor cantilever along Bell Street. Looking at the overall tower views, 2000 South Bell will be a beacon along Route 1, and the undulating architecture is the main focal point. Switching gears to 2001 South Bell, this building includes a glazed green brick facade on the northern part of the building that transitions to a gray brick facade on the southern portion of the building. And the pedestrian connection that Adam alluded to ties into the existing sidewalk on 20th Street, shown here in some of the renderings. As called for in the Crystal City Sector Plan, 2001 South Bell has an architectural feature that we've pointed out on this slide. And the feature is defined by the distinctive green brick corner that separates this portion of the building from the rest of the building. And it also has cantilevered corners and an elongated light-filled cornice that's shown in this highlight box. Moving on to the underground. With this project, we are also reestablishing the existing underground connection from the 20th Street tunnel to the Crystal City shops. The existing configuration is shown on this slide highlighted in green, and our proposed revised configuration is shown highlighted in blue. As Adam mentioned, our design has evolved greatly throughout the LRPC and SPRC processes. And as you can see, our original design and LRPC was to provide an underground connection open to the garage that would transition into an above grade connection and connect into the new pedestrian pathway. However, we received a lot of public comment and feedback on this and have since revised our proposal to fully underground the connection by transitioning to the G2 level of our garage. And at the bottom of the slide, there are some renderings that we showed during SPRC to give a sense of the look and the feel that we're considering with this new design. This slide is just showing some more of the renderings that we put together. I believe we showed these at the SPRC wrap-up meeting, but just to give some more sense of what we're proposing the underground connection look like. And here we're just kind of showing you again the different pathways highlighted in this orange color. So they're on the G1 level as well as the G2 level of the garage, taking people from Crystal City shops all the way to the 20th Street tunnel. So moving into the pedestrian connection, starting out with pedestrian circulation routes for the site, here we can see pedestrian circulation routes from the residential entries of both buildings across 20th Street and also over to the pedestrian connection that we'll get into a little bit more now. So the pedestrian connection is located to the east of 2001 South Bell Street, and it's another part of our design that has greatly evolved throughout this process, and we believe has greatly improved thanks to all the feedback that we've gotten along the way. So here we can see a couple images of where we started during LRPC to where we ended up today. And it's important to note that our final design that we have currently incorporates a lot of curvilinear elements as well as more greenery and biophilia. And we feel that it's just a more welcoming and inviting place that people will hopefully enjoy walking through and will want to spend some time in. Taking a little bit of a more technical look at the pedestrian pathway, here we have our detailed site plan, and this is really showing how in the interim condition, the pedestrian connection will connect to the existing plaza that exists adjacent to 220 20th Street, and this will remain an interim condition until the submittal of a future 4.1 application on the block. And here we're just showing some more renderings of different vantage points of how we're anticipating the space to look and feel, with a focus on the lighting elements as well as bringing in a lot more greenery to the space and some curvilinear elements, as I mentioned, as well as a platform that connects up into the plaza. So switching gears to transportation, as we mentioned previously, the garage will have 247 residential spaces, which is a ratio of about 0.325. And we will be providing 333 bike parking spaces, which is exceeding the Arlington County bicycle parking requirements. Here we can see our proposed remaining parking on the block at the bottom of the slide. And this is just pointing out, with the addition of our new garage, we'll have 247 dedicated residential spaces, 45 dedicated retail spaces, and 10 visitor spaces. We made pickup and drop-off recommendations to staff and are proposing to have one singular location with a double-length space along 20th Street on the northern portion of the project to serve pickup and drop-off for both buildings. Getting into street sections, here we can see this proposed revised streetscape for 20th Street West, and we're proposing to provide a new street section that includes an 8-foot clear sidewalk as well as a 5-foot clear landscape zone. Switching gears to 20th Street South, we're going to have the same 8-foot clear sidewalk and 5-foot clear landscape zone with an additional 5-foot tree planting area. Our Route 1 proposed frontage has an 18.5-foot sidewalk section that's inclusive of a 10-foot clear sidewalk as well as a 5-foot landscape zone. And switching gears into the Clark Bell streetscape, as Adam mentioned, our initial proposal was to have a cross section that was 72 feet. However, we have since revised that and come back with a 76.5-foot cross section that's inclusive of an 8-foot clear sidewalk and 5-foot landscaping on both sides, as well as dual direction protected bike facilities on both sides of the road as well. And so here we can see that information in a table form, so different from the imagery that we saw on the previous slide. And though we're not proposing an 80-foot cross-section per the Crystal City sector plan, we feel that we can sufficiently serve all of the transportation loads within this 76.5-foot cross-section. So a couple key points that we just wanted to point out as it relates to the streetscapes that we've provided. It's important to note that the proposed 76.5-foot right-of-way for Clark Bell is not a precedent, and in the future, the starting point for future projects will still be 80 feet as called for in the Crystal City sector plan. And we were also working under a specific set of circumstances for the interim connection at Clark Bell, given there isn't any guidance in the sector plan for how to get there. The circumstances also evolved greatly during LRPC and SBRC, and we are now including a transitway and protected bike lanes. So just finishing up on the last two streetscapes we're proposing, the connector road and the alley. The alleyway will have a 6-foot clear sidewalk on one end and an 8-foot clear sidewalk on the other. And the connector road streetscape includes a 10-foot dual direction bike lane coordinated with the Arlington County bike plan. So the connector road is another streetscape that we kind of came back with and revised. And so initially we were just proposing a single track 6-foot protected bike lane, but have since grown that to accommodate a single dual direction 10-foot bike lane. Moving on to sustainability. Sustainability commitments for this project include LEED Gold, which is a step up from the PDSP standard of LEED Silver, bird glass materials per Arlington County standards, a 12% energy reduction above ASHRAE, as well as conducting a carbon neutral study. And here is just a view of our LEED scorecard and how we're planning to achieve LEED Gold for reference. Moving into the PDSP community benefits, the PDSP was approved by the Arlington County Board last March, and it enabled a holistic community benefits package across 2300, 223 23rd Street, 1900 Crystal Drive, and 101 12th. And we are proposing to amend the PDSP to incorporate 2000 and 2001 South Bell Street, and we're working with the county manager on a proposal for achieving additional density, as Adam alluded to. So getting into that a little bit more, the specific bonus density and community benefits for this project include a $1.25 million commitment for the library under 1901 South Bell Street, the design, construction, and easement for the new pedestrian pathway, as well as an $81,000 contribution provided for open space improvements in Crystal City, the realignment and easement dedication of Clark Bell Street, as well as working with staff and VDOT to improve the Route 1 and 20th Street intersection, the preservation and installation of the improved underground connection, a commitment to LEED Gold, bird-friendly materials, net zero analysis, and 12% over ASHRAE, as well as 4 2-bedroom units and 3 1-bedroom units for 7 units total at River House. And we will also be doubling the standard contribution to the Public Art Fund for a total of $150,000. So wrapping up with a summary of where we started and where we've been, as staff noted, we had our final SPRC wrap-up meeting last month. We went to Transportation Commission, I believe, at the end of last week. We are here speaking with you tonight with the hope of presenting to the county board next Saturday on May 15th. And that concludes the applicant's presentation, and we'll now be happy to take any comments or questions.
Thank you, Ms. Hennigan. Madam Clerk, do we have any public speakers?
Yes, we do. Let me see if I can bring my screen up. Nope, that's not it. Oh, thank you. Here we go. All righty. We have Ms. Catherine Simpson to speak on this item this evening.
Okay, are you ready to speak?
Are you ready for me?
We can hear you.
Okay, great. Thank you, folks. My name is Catherine Simpson. There's no E in that, by the way. In February, I moved into an apartment at 2111 Richmond Highway on the 8th floor of the Crystal Plaza Apartments, directly fronting the current 2001 Richmond Highway building, which I very recently learned is being demolished and not just being renovated. My home and my home office are just a softball's throw from the other building. I'm very concerned about the noise, dust, potential cranes, and privacy issues for the next 2 years. I'm here today to ask the Planning Commission in Arlington County and the construction company about what you're going to be doing to protect and mitigate the intrusion that this demolition and construction project will have on my residents and all residents fronting this construction. I'm taken by surprise at the demolition, and that's something I'm taking up with my own landlord, so I'm not blaming you. But that being said, this is going to be an extensive intrusion on my home and my life and the life of residents of Crystal Plaza Apartments that directly front that. And we're talking about a softball throw's distance between that. So what can I expect of the construction company and of the county in terms of minimizing the negative impact that this will have on living and working in my home during this 2-year period? Specifically, quiet times, what are the hazard mitigations? What are the crane safety mitigations? What demolition safety mitigations are going to happen? And then just as an off comment on the parking that's going to be part of the new facilities, that is a 1-to-3 ratio of parking to apartment spaces. That seems crazy to me, but I'd appreciate an explanation of that as well. Thank you for your time today, and I appreciate the opportunity to be heard.
Thank you, Ms. Simpson. Do we have any other commenters, Madam Clerk?
No, we do not.
Do we have any commissions in attendance who wish to speak? Okay, not hearing any, I'll give the Transportation Commission report. We did hear it at Transportation Commission last Thursday, as was mentioned earlier. The Transportation Commission was overall pleased with this this project, and for the transportation, and noted the substantial improvements on all transportation-related aspects of this project, specifically the improvements to the pedestrian connections and the bonus open space that results from it, the changes to the original design of the underground to be fully enclosed and climate controlled, the 12th and 20th Street South intersection improvements were noted. The build to line of 80 feet was discussed, and the cross section of 76.5 feet was deemed acceptable. They specifically noted there's now space for a two-way bike facility on Clark, and also noted that there is flexibility there for it to either be a single two-way lane or two separate, one north, one south lane there. They also looked upon the 0.325 parking ratio with favor. That's actually quite good. The vote was, as noted, 9-0 in favor of the county manager's recommendations for all of the matters. And one final note was that for these protected bike lanes, is to please have them be better than just flexi posts and make them more permanent, more protected. That's the Transportation Commission report. We also should have an SBRC report. Commissioner Weir, are you ready to give us that?
Yeah, and I don't have a whole lot to add to the staff report or the applicant's report because, as has been noted, this became a fairly uncontroversial project by the time we got to the third SPRC meeting, which was also a joint meeting with the Long Range Planning Committee. I late in the day sent around an email articulating where there had been controversy early on, but as I was drafting it, I realized that in just about each case, the controversy, such as it is, seemed to seemed to diminish to being either questions about clarification or questions about how precedents can be, how the perception of a precedent, of a legal precedent, or at least of a political precedent, can be avoided when we get further along in the development process and are starting to deal with other projects along the Clark Bell Street. A couple other things that did come up as we just heard in the Transportation Commission report. There's a lasting concern about just what we use to ensure that there is proper protection and separation between the bike lanes and the main motorized vehicular traffic lanes. If we are relying on knockdown bollards, then there's a real strong likelihood that they'll get knocked down, and for want of proper pickup and drop off, that we will see what we are seeing anywhere else, which is that the bike lanes become the pickup and drop off lanes, which is just completely unacceptable. And so there's a real strong, there was a real strong request for something a little bit more permanent, perhaps relocatable concrete curbs or something like that. But I think we also heard from staff that by the time we see any earth actually being moved, we're likely to have a more formalized policy in place for what it is that we do to protect bike lanes. There's still a little bit of question about the actual relationship between the outdoor pedestrian corridor and open space 8. But one thing that I think that became clear over the course of the project, and one thing that I'm interested in is if that 60-foot tower separation really does end up happening, then do we actually have what is the delta going to look like that's presently tower now? And that's something that we can't really know. A couple of other interesting suggestions came up in terms of community benefits, subsidizing Metroway or funding for stronger renter protections. And then there's a question of given the proposed offsite location of committed affordable housing units at River House, what of the anticipated future development of River House in the next year? I will be beginning with the only motions that I'll be offering this evening that I plan to offer are those recommended by the county manager, because I think that this this ended up as being very much a model process, but in general terms, I think some things that we could use to begin to frame our discussion would be the relationship between the 80-foot guidance in the sector plan and the 76.5-foot cross section. the underground pedestrian connection, the above ground pedestrian passageway, open space as it relates to the sector and block plans, and then questions about the conditions and whether the consensus points are adequately captured in them. And again, I will just say that I don't think that that any of these are obstacles to moving forward. I just relay them as the themes of the conversations that sort of happened throughout the course of the project. So I will be very pleased to support this project, but that is what I offer as the report.
Thank you, Commissioner Weir. I think at this point we are ready to move on to with the commission. We're ready for discussion.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Stoll, you have something to raise?
Yeah, I just wanted to know if you were going to entertain additional topics of.
Yes, that's what I'm going to talk about right now.
Oh, okay, great. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, our discussion items. What I have right now for us to talk about were 3 transportation-related items. The right-of-way width from 80 feet versus 76.5. The bike facilities, meaning that the lanes on the streets, and improvements to the underground. We also would have open space. And if there are other items of topics of discussion that we should be raising, let me know now, Commissioner Stoll, and then Commissioner Siegel, and then Commissioner Steinberg, Commissioner Morton after that. So, Commissioner Stoll, you're first.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sorry for jumping the gun there. So I would like to ask staff about the CAFs and River House, and I also would like to ask about the changes to the conditions that Mr. Watson included on his slide 19. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Siegel.
Good evening, Chair Lantelmi. I'd like to add to the agenda a note about the what Commissioner Weir, I think, called process. This was a very, very good process, and I think there are some elements that need to be recognized. So I wanted to make a comment. Perhaps others have remarks about the process too.
Thank you, Commissioner Siegel. Commissioner Morton.
Hi, sorry, I thought I was next. I wanted to just make a quick comment about the architectural feature.
Okay.
Thank you.
And Commissioner Steinberger.
Yeah, I had a couple comments. I wanted to talk about the pickup drop-off location, if that's not already on the list. Okay. And then I had a clarification with regards to the distance, the 60-foot distance between the new structure and then I guess whatever will ultimately replace Crystal Plaza Apartments, if and when that redevelops.
Separation. And Commissioner Sarli.
Thank you, Commissioner Lantelmi. I have a question about tower coverage. I just needed some clarification on that.
Okay. I think what we'll do first, we'll hit on the transportation items, and those will include the right-of-way width, the bikes, the underground, the pickup and drop-off. Commissioner Stoll, by the way, what is slide 19? Remind me what's on that substantively.
Sure. So, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Watson mentioned that there's still some conditions that are being worked out or are being revised. So I recognize that under the 5th or 6th bullet, there's questions about conditions. So I'm happy to include it under that. But it's more just kind of gathering understanding of what is in flux and what has been revised.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Okay, why don't we first start with transportation? Any clarifying questions? Any points commissioners would like to raise? We'll first touch on the right-of-way width, and that's the sector plan calls for 80 feet. This project is looking at, and the county manager's recommendation is for 76.5 feet. I open the floor to that. Anybody have any clarifying questions I'd like to do? Seeing none, discussion. Okay, nobody seems to want to raise anything further on that. How about we move on to the bike element? Here, the issue is the bike lanes. We have them on the new Clark Street. I did have one clarifying question, and this did come up with Transportation Commission. This would be from Ms. Gabor. I understand that we have not yet fully locked down a specific design, which means whether it would be a single two-way on the north, on the eastern side, or two separate one-way lanes on either side of the street. Ms. Gabor.
Thank you. My name is Joanne Gabor. I'm with DES. If it's possible, if someone would be able to pull up the slide that just shows the site plan so we can make sure we were all looking at the same thing and talking about the same thing. While it's being pulled up, I'm just going to talk a little bit about it. So this project is within the larger Crystal City area that we county staff are currently moving forward with a Crystal City bike network. We are looking at trying to enhance facilities along the east side of Richmond Highway from 12th Street all the way down to the Arlington County line. And part of what we are looking at is trying to see if there's a way to have a two-way cycle track along Clark Bell Street. Currently, we had one public engagement opportunity earlier this year. We were to have our second engagement opportunity with the bike network on April 28th, but we have postponed it just to try and finalize some other updates that we're looking at and then go to the county board hopefully later this year. And these would be improvements that the county would put forward. So what we're looking at is basically there's a short-term plan and then a long-term plan. And some of the long-term elements do require some of the proposed development work to be completed. And so what we're looking at in this area is trying to figure out the block between 18th and 20th Street along Bell Street, so just north of here, how that is going to look. Since at this point there is no proposed development along that block, and it is a little bit of a challenge for that block currently. And the concern is how do we transition of the whatever bike lanes we end up with on the northern portion of this to this new section of Clark Bell Street. And it may end up that it makes more sense to keep the two bike lanes as shown here to minimize any safety issues at the intersection of 20th and South Bell Street, with potentially ultimate goal, if we have redevelopment along the block north of here, that there is a two-way cycle track all on the east side. That may have been a very long-winded answer to your question, but please let me know if you have any more questions.
Thank you. I do appreciate the clarification there, and I personally am in favor of that flexibility, depending on the further definition of the bike network in Crystal City. By the time these buildings are built, that should be locked down. So thank you for that. Do we have any further comments on the bike facility issues from other commissioners? Let's then move on to the pickup and drop off. As a reminder, that would be on 20th Street over by the eastern tower. I guess it's the eastern tower. Any comments on that? Actually, I do have one clarifying question on that too. How many spots would be? How many car lanes or how many pickup drop off parking slots would there be in as proposed? And either the staff or applicant can answer that.
So if you guys can see the screen, here is the proposed pickup and drop off location. It's 44 feet, which I believe is it's a pickup drop off to account for both 2001 South Bell as well as 2000. And in talking with staff, we came to the conclusion that this location might be the most ideal given there isn't any conflicts with any loading for either of the buildings.
That's correct. It's 2 parking spaces, and as because this is county right-of-way, we will control the management of these spaces. So if we find we need additional pickup and drop-off spaces in this area, or finding that the 2 are not used effectively, we can always revise the use of these to standard meter parking spaces, or whatever other use may be applicable in the future.
Thank you for that clarification. Do we have any further discussion on the pickup and drop-off by other commissioners? Yes, Commissioner Steinberger.
Thank you. Can we go back to the slide that was just on the shared view, if that's okay? So, and I'm bad at reading plans, but in terms of the distance, because I understand the main entrance is in each tower is sort of along in the middle there. Someone with a pointer kind of show me where the entrances are in relation to the pickup and loading. Okay, so that seems like a fair distance from the actual pickup and drop off location that's proposed. Is there a concern from an ADA compliance standpoint, or from otherwise just, you know, logistically reasonable for people to walk, maybe of differing abilities? I'm just concerned that that's not a terribly, I understand that it doesn't have impacts with loading, and that's good, but I'm concerned that it's not terribly accommodating for potential residents. Or you know, people, I guess it's better from the retail perspective, but I'm concerned that it's not great for the residents. I would appreciate a response.
And that can be either staff or applicant.
I believe that's an applicant question.
So we proposed originally a different location, I guess closer to the residential entries, down by the loading. However, in talking with staff, it seemed like this location would be better. However, I don't know. I guess I would defer to Robert on our team.
Yeah, hi, this is Robert.
How many feet is that from the entrances to the proposed loading, pickup and drop off?
Approximately 100 feet, 125 feet. So given the bike facilities, and there is a constraint on the ability to provide pickup drop off along that section of Bell Street. You know, as DES indicated, we'll continue to monitor the situation, and to the extent there is additional pickup and drop off required to help operations, then we can re-examine it at that time. But this is the proposal that we put forth that is supported by staff.
Okay, I appreciate that. I just, you know, I think it's I think there are many wonderful features to this development. I think that, you know, as others have said, the process really that got us to this point has been truly a shining example of when the SPRC process can go well, and can really benefit community and the developers to the benefit of Arlington. I looked at it, it was like really just like stuck in my craw. That didn't seem like the best location. I understand there are certainly constraints, but I wanted to kind of have it on the record that I do think that's something that needs to kind of continue to be watched. And I do have that as a concern. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Steinberg. And actually, I'd like to add, I think that's a really good observation. And I think it is something that we'll probably be seeing in other applications going forward over the coming years, because as our bike network, our protected bike network expands, which is what we all find very much desirable, there will be choices to be made between pickup and drop off and the bike lanes and maybe other uses. So this is something that, you know, we will be wrestling with in the future with other projects, I believe. Commissioner Sarli, you're next.
Thank you. I guess on a similar vein, I just wanted to follow up, and again, just for my edification perhaps, but how do you enforce pickup and drop-off zones, and how do you prevent people from just dropping off or picking up in front of the door where it's more convenient? I guess I'll start with staff.
Yes, thank you for that question. So these are enforced parking spaces. The one thing I did want to note, and just echo what Commissioner Lantelmi was saying, it is something that is a challenge in this area, is having the protected bike lanes and having pickup and drop off spaces and having the parking spaces. So we are having to make some choices. And this will not be the first time we have this conversation. The parking spaces proposed are the only legal parking spaces along any of the building frontages. And so that's part of the genesis of where they were proposed. So the parking space enforcement is based on just any other, like a parking meter, a loading zone. It is enforced by Arlington County. They're signed for passenger pickup and drop off, 5 minutes, 10 minutes. And then as we see fit, because it is county right of way and we do manage it, we can either expand the number of parking spaces for pickup and drop off, or we can reduce it as we see fit based on usage. Stopping in a travel lane is not legal. So if folks do stop in the travel lane, it is a illegal activity and the police can enforce that. I'm not really sure how to answer that question.
No, it's yeah, I appreciate it, and you're right. And this is why it dawned on me that people are probably just going to pull up right in front of the door, and I think it'll take a little bit of complaining, perhaps, till people feel ashamed about doing that. But thank you for your answer.
Thank you, Commissioner Sarli. Do we have any other questions or comments on pickup and drop-off? Hearing none, let's move on to the underground. As a reminder, we've had significant changes in the proposed design so that it is now fully enclosed and climate controlled, and does seem to comply with the sector plan's vision for the underground. Do you have any further comments on it? Questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, I think we can then move on to open space. Does anybody have any questions or comments on the proposed open space designs? Okay, nothing there. Let's then move on to the CAFs and other conditions. So Commissioner Stroll, I think that's something you might have some issues on, or questions about.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Watson, was wondering if you could bring up your slide 19. Thank you, Mr. Watson. So I was just wondering if you could walk through each of the, oh, there we go.
Can you see it?
We can now. Thank you, Mr.
Okay.
Watson.
Okay.
Just wanted to see if you could walk through each of these and maybe just briefly describe its current condition, maybe what staff's working through, and what you might still be working on with the applicant.
Yep.
That would be helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. Okay, so I'll start obviously at the top here with the PSDP Amendment. As I mentioned, a big component of what's coming here is infrastructure work related to the intersection at Richmond Highway and 20th Street. And a part of that, it will need to be tied with the final site plan, which is, you can see down there below on condition 19, CEP stands for Civil Engineering Plan. And so there's still a number of sort of wordsmithing things that we need to work through with the applicant with regards to VDOT, because VDOT controls that right of way. Again, this is something that is a non-standard condition, so it's just a matter of making sure that everything lines up between those two different sets of conditions, because again, the PSP is there to sort of memorialize what is being done to earn the additional density. In terms of affordable housing, that was language that we were working with the county attorney's office on. I actually think that this is now resolved. I don't have it to share here tonight, but it was just a matter of getting clarification from the county attorney on some of the questions related to how the language was written for those CAFs at River House. It's very similar to what was approved in 1900 Crystal Drive. In terms of the dedications and the easements, again, that is just wordsmithing with the I'm jumping around here. That's condition 23 of site plan 458. That's again just working with the county attorney's office to finalize the language for that. Again, you're probably noticing a theme here. These are non-standard conditions that we're working on. These always take a little bit longer. So 56 with the pedestrian passageway. Again, just making sure that we are all in agreement about what that is. I don't expect any change from it being a 7,200 square foot public access easement. Same thing with the underground, and then again with the library is just working out with the manager's office, with the county attorney's office about the execution of that lease, and then getting the $1.25 million over the course of 5 years. So it's again, I don't expect any of those figures that we shared earlier to change, the dollar figures or the sort of the dedications. It's just a matter of working with the county attorney's office and the applicant to sort of hammer out the final language.
That's very helpful, Mr. Watson. Appreciate you walking me through that.
Sure.
One maybe just recommendation in the future, and I'm glad staff is starting to do this. I know this was a recommendation that I've made and others have made. So thank you for including this in the slide deck. I think the only thing I would suggest going forward is just maybe spend a minute on this slide in the future, just walking through the kind of where things stand. Yeah, it sounds like these are, like you said, are kind of non-traditional conditions and are taking a little bit more time. So I certainly understand that and appreciate the explanation. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Sure, duly noted. We will definitely do that next time.
Thank you, Mr. Watson and Commissioner Schroll. Any other questions on conditions, including caps?
Mr. Chair, this is, if I could speak out of turn for 1 second, I did see Commissioner Gregory's hand raised when you were talking about open space earlier. I don't know if we want to jump back to that or not, but I just thought I would raise it. And apologies for speaking out of turn here.
Yeah, Mr. Gregory, are you representing the Parks and Rec Commission?
Yes, I am, and I wasn't sure when to jump in.
When I was calling for commissions. Okay, you can give your report on the full Parks and Rec.
Oh, no, thank you very much. We think that we attended the meetings through LRPC and the SPRC process, and we reviewed them with our commission at in our last meeting on April 27th. And we all thought that the pedestrian pathway had come a really long way from its initial depiction, and thought that it's going to bring it was a good process to go through, and that the applicant really responded and came back with an excellent design that we all appreciated. What we're hoping is that when we look towards the link to Park 8, that we can have some synergy there, that we have a nice pedestrian parkway that flows into a proposed future Park 8 and gives us access all the way to Crystal Drive. So the final note in all that is that it is sort of a shady area, and we make comments about biophilic components, but we have to be sure that let's be sure that the final selection of the trees and the plantings can get along in that shady environment. So that was our open space, and we also commented on noted the bird-friendly design, which was important to many of our members. We're close to the Potomac River and the flyway, and that was an important element. And the appreciation that we have for the underground and how that turned out, with sort of separating the pedestrians from the garage space and keeping that enclosed and making that a nicer walkway. So that was what we had come up with, and we appreciate the opportunity to comment.
Thank you, Mr. Gregory. I'm glad we're able to get to you. Commissioner Schroll, your hand is still up. Do you have something to add?
Mr. Chairman, I do have a question on the CAFs, and I don't know if you're entertaining that now.
Yes.
Thank you. It's a question for staff. regarding the CAFs, the 7 CAFs in River House. I'm wondering, Mr. Watson, if you can kind of walk through how those will be handled. And we know that River House is also up for redevelopment. So kind of also interested in you addressing in your response, you know, are these CAFs going to be 30-year CAFs, meaning that there wouldn't be any redevelopment of that part of River House, or that would be prohibited from being redeveloped? If you could please address sort of how that could play out, that would be helpful.
Yeah, sure. And I have to say up front that I will do my best to answer that question. I might have to refer some of this to the our housing staff and get back to you on it. But yeah, there's 7 CAFs at the James Building at River House that are proposed. That's a 30-year commitment. Households earning up to 60% AMI. And it's a majority family size units. So we have 4 2-bedroom units and we have 3 1-bedroom units. The condition will require a minimum square footage. I don't know off the top of my head what exactly that is, but you know, hopefully to have those details laid out in the staff report for the county board. In terms of the redevelopment at River House, this would be obviously something that is taken into consideration if and when that does occur. And I know that that's not probably the answer that you're looking for, but it's the answer. It's the one that I know right now, and we're aware of it. And I'm not sure if anybody else here on staff tonight wants to address that. I would also just add that the applicant may have a perspective on this as well, because they are the property owners of River House as well. So I see Mr. Pfeiffer has his hand up, and I'm going to be quiet now before I get myself in trouble.
Please jump in.
Thank you, Adam. Members of the Planning Commission, this is Matt Pfeiffer at the Planning Division. My understanding, and the applicant can elaborate on this as well, but the 3 existing buildings, including the James Building, where the CAFs from the Crystal City PSP will be located, are not going to be the subject of the redevelopment proposals. And in fact, I think you see when the slides came out for the Pentagon City Planning Study, I think it was discussed last week. I think none of the development scenarios contemplated redevelopment of those existing buildings. So that should be squared away.
Thank you, Mr. Pfeiffer. That's helpful. Okay. I will yield back, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate staff's explanations.
Thank you, Commissioner Stroh. Let's now move on to process. Commissioner Siegel.
Thank you, Commissioner Lantelmi. I was very pleased to hear Commissioner Weir and other commissioners compliment and praise the process that was undertaken to deliver a very complicated project, including a lot of community benefits, an existing and novel Crystal City PDSP, and open space, and the underground, which was a particular challenge. And I did want to remind my fellow commissioners that it really wasn't only productive SPRC, LRPC meetings that we had that delivered this result to us, although they were productive. I'm not denigrating or demoting that at all to you. But there was a very robust conversation between the developer and the Crystal City I think some of the livability 22202 group underlying this progress. It really takes a lot of time, and we don't have that amount of time with 3 SPRCs and a community engagement and that sort of back and forth. So I just sort of wanted to highlight that, and I think the developer deserves a lot of credit for spending that amount of time, for looking again and again at proposals. I mean, it was almost an iterative kind of process between these non-PC conversations and the civic association conversation. So I just did want to highlight that, and I think that sort of robust community engagement at several levels is what delivers this sort of great outcome. Commissioner Land, tell me, I do think we should put. I'm terribly sorry. It just occurred to me. Ms. Simpson raised an issue about construction. I unfortunately could not attend the last SPRC meeting, and I don't know whether you discussed that. Normally, we do have, the developer will have a point of contact for the community straight through the construction. That's part of it. There are other features, and I don't know whether we want to call upon staff and or the applicant to just perhaps set Ms. Simpson's mind a little bit more at ease on that point.
Yes, and actually after we've gone through this and then the architectural issues, I want to raise that to the end. And if either staff or the applicant can raise the how and when demolition will begin, who the contact person is, how they will work through the Crystal City Civic Association, which would be standard for this, to do a quick description of how that all will occur, and the basic construction timeline. So I'll give them a little bit of time to get that together while we go through the other issues. Commissioner Bagley.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. And I may not have my timing on this right, but since Commissioner Siegel brought up the process, and perhaps, this should go to the end, I just, since Ms. Simpson appears to have come in midway or after or during the process, I'm hoping that staff or someone can reach out to her to talk about what parking ratios and things the county does use and look at, since it is a question to her. And as Commissioner Siegel pointed out, yes, there's a construction contact, but as someone who's lived in a neighborhood where there's a lot of construction, I think it behooves the applicant to make sure that they have reached out to the entire building, make sure everybody understands what's going on, addresses issues and things like that. Again, I don't know if my timing is correct on this, but since it had just come up, I wanted to just weigh in on that, because a lot of times communication can certainly allay a lot of fears, especially some of the ones that Ms. Simpson brought up tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Bagley. Commissioner Siegel, is there a hand up for another one, or just back to the time?
Same one, just jumping on Commissioner Bagley's recommendations. There's also the Crystal City Civic Association. A lady named Carol Fuller is the president of it. I think you can find them online, and that's another way to stay informed. There are many, many routes to being informed about what development issues are and what development projects are on tap for the county. So that's another resource that I just wanted to flag.
Thank you, Commissioner Siegel. Moving on to the architectural issues. We had questions about the architectural feature. Does anybody want to talk about that? Any questions or comments? Commissioner Moore.
Thank you. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this. I was able to attend, I think, a couple of the many meetings you had on this, and I don't want to rehash it or expect some sort of a change. But I do want to express my ongoing concern about this architectural feature issue. I don't think there's been a project since I've been on the commission that has satisfied the community or fully satisfied the Planning Commission in terms of, I think, the conception of what a feature should be. And I really endorse the need for flexibility and creativity and leaving room for surprise. We may not be able to specify every single thing. I think in general, people have consistently thought a feature, the feature should stand out a little bit more. If you ask somebody on the street, what's the feature of this building, maybe they'd be able to articulate it. So again, I don't expect any, I'm not going to make a motion or anything, but I'd really love, maybe this is directed more to staff, for us to be thinking seriously about this. It is in the sector plan. I'm not sure we're taking it as seriously as we take other aspects of the sector plan. I'd love to see us compile some precedents for why we're deciding something's a feature and why it's not. Anyway, appreciate a lot of movement by the applicant on many issues, but I wish there had been a little bit more on this. I did see their presentation where they talked through the alternatives and they returned to their original design. So just wanted to put in my 2 cents on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Morton. Before we go to staff on this, why don't we just get all the comments on the feature and see if we can get one response on those. Commissioner Peterson.
Thank you so much. I wanted to align myself with Commissioner Morton's comments. When I was watching the presentation, I also was surprised to see that the corner top of that building was considered an architectural feature, and perhaps there is a need for education for myself about what defines an educational feature. Maybe we could have staff come in and do a presentation for us and show us, 10 examples of architectural features that have been approved in the last few years and what makes them an architectural feature and what are some examples of something that wouldn't be an architectural feature. Because looking at this project, it's a nice building, but I really got up close to my computer and thought, like, what is it about that makes it an architectural feature? So I think that would be helpful, more definitions from staff and maybe some education for myself at least on why this would be considered an architectural feature. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Peterson. Mr. Sarli.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I think, being the token architect on the commission, I also am not sure what architectural feature is. And if, I just want to associate myself with the prior 2 comments. I think it's something and I think it's a great idea by Commissioner Morton to perhaps for us to start to develop a study. And even if we have our own internal definition of what an architectural feature is, even allowing for some, a wider range than what's in the definition. I think that's a good way to go for the future, just to help us through these community processes where people aren't architects, and even architects are having a hard time understanding what the meaning is. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sarli. Commissioner Gearing and Commissioner Siegel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to associate myself with the prior 3 comments, those of Commissioner Morton, Commissioner Peterson, and Commissioner Sarli. We have raised this issue before, that we would like to have more information on how best to weigh in on that concept of architectural feature. And I appreciate our resident designer, Commissioner Morton, and our architect, Commissioner Sarli, also underscoring how important that is. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Gearing. Commissioner Siegel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would also associate myself with this conversation, but I wanted to point out, and this may or may not be a counterpoint note, that I think we've heard that there are 19 instances in the Crystal City Sector Plan of where architectural features should be completed and proposed. I just worry that if everything's an architectural feature, then nothing is an architectural feature. There has to be a foreground and a background. And I would think that if we do ask staff to reconsider the language and define it a little more, maybe study it a little more, that they would think about both sides to make it clear in sector plan that everything needs to be a standout feature, or are we also embracing maybe another category of defining architectural presentation that's not a clock on the a big clock or a tower or something outstanding? And I would also ask staff to just quickly weigh in on should we want a language change, which I think we either want a language change or a concept definition, how would that reinterpretation of what's in the sector plan come about? What would need to happen? Would we actually change the language in the plan? Would there be an addendum? Is there something like legislative history? I wonder if staff could just tell us, inform us of that.
Thank you, Commissioner Siegel. I definitely also want to associate myself with the comments of my fellow commissioners on architectural feature. It's an issue that has come up in I don't know how many site plan reviews, and it continues to frustrate us every time it comes up. Mr. Matuzik.
Good evening, Matt Matuzik with the Planning Division. One of the things that we've heard consistently is this very issue and how some of the earlier or early Crystal City projects just happen to have locations where these sort of features are identified in the sector plan. It's something that is on our radar, and we do plan to address it as one formal update as part of the Crystal City Building Heights analysis, where we are taking a closer look at the language as well as the imagery that accompanies it to really give folks a sense of what we mean, how we have learned from recent projects, and even regionally, I think, what should classify as a feature and how much flexibility we believe should be available for some of those sites. So that's something we want to continue to monitor and bring back to the LRPC for further discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Matuza. If there's no more further comments on the architectural feature, we can also now talk about building separation. Does anybody want to raise anything about that, either questions or comments? Yes, Commissioner Sarli.
My question wasn't directly building separation, but it's tangentially associated. It's tower coverage.
Sure.
Sorry?
That's appropriate. Raise it now.
Thanks. And I just found out where it is on the drawing. So my question was answered in the set. But I was just double checking on the language on the sector plan, and it says 5th story or 65 feet and above, we have to be at 85% in this particular plot. So the question is, and we're at 61, I believe, on the west tower and 67 on the east tower. But it seems to go lower. And then maybe this is a question for staff, like, is that a concern? Did we have an intent to have that podium mass go up to 65, or is this actually a better solution than what the sector plan asked for? Does that make sense?
Thank you, Commissioner Sarli. I think the answer to your question is the latter. I think it's actually, you don't want tower coverage to exceed 85% above the podium. And so this doesn't. It's 20%-ish less than 85%, if that answers the question.
And then the podium height that had the sort of 65 foot or 5 stories, it seems to be lower on certain portions of the project. Is that a concern at all, or not?
No, I mean it fluctuates. The podium is generally, I think what we're concerned about more is not having the podium exceed a certain height. For example, like on the frontage on 20th Street for the West Tower, having that single story, double. Well, it's a single story, but the height of the interior space matches what's in our Arlington County retail plan, which is a little bit taller ceilings to allow for a better tenant space in there. That just provides a better human scale. So what we wouldn't want was the podium, extending up above the 5th floor level, if that answers the question.
All right, and since I have you, I'll ask you, is this idea of the tower coverage at all intended to sculpt or create setbacks, or is it just that relationship to the podium directly?
I think it's a component of the overall, design guidelines that are in section 3.11 of the sector plan, which goes into, great detail. We go into that detail in the staff report as well about, the podium frontage, how tall the podium is, how much it engages the build to line. Then you jump into talking about the towers. And there's a number of criteria laid out there, and tower coverage and tower separation just happen to be the two aspects of all of those criteria that were codified in the zoning ordinance. So again, there's no tower coverage deviation. All of these things are sort of working together to create a sculpting that was lacking in Crystal City at the time of the adoption of the sector plan.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Steinberger, then Commissioner Morton.
Thank you. And apologies, I couldn't get my little hand raised fast enough before. So my comment with regards to the distance between the buildings and that sort of the tower separation is really just more of a clarification with regards to the present ownership of the Crystal Plaza apartments. Is the agreement that they will build at that 60-foot separation and meet that full amount of the distance? Is that in writing? I just wanted to understand that that was firmly committed to.
Correct. And let me, if I can just share my screen briefly. Hopefully this doesn't take a long time, but let me know when you can see this.
I can see.
Okay, so the center image here is a chip of the actual block plan that is part of the document that you guys are considering this evening and that the county board will consider. And there is a footnote specifically in there that mentions exactly what you just said about the owner of the Crystal Plaza apartments achieving that future 60-foot setback. So yes, it is captured in the block plan document, which is a requirement of the zoning ordinance for this modification.
Okay, great. And apologies that I don't always read the footnotes fully, but that commitment is in writing, so I'm appreciative of that.
No problem.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Steinberger. Commissioner Morton.
Thank you. Along the same lines as Commissioner Steinberger was asking, and apologies, I'm sure this was pretty thoroughly discussed in the meetings. I wasn't able to attend, but for my own edification, how typical is it to accept a deviation like this with sort of an unspecified demolition of a building that would in fact make those conditions conform?
So I don't know the answer to how typical it is. This, there have only been a handful of redevelopments that have occurred since the adoption of the Crystal City Sector Plan where this has come into play. But the important thing is that the Arlington County zoning ordinance lays out very clear criteria about when we can accept such a modification. And it's essentially this scenario that is shown here in the block plan where the applicant agrees to the future scenario. I would add, and this is a bit of a tangent, but I think it's actually a salient point, is that that apartment complex sits directly on the property line, on the lot line. Even if this were not a condition in the block plan, if that building were to redevelop, if it wanted to have any fenestration whatsoever, it would be required to stand back from that line. And so again, it's really more of a question of when and not a question of if.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Commissioner Morton. I think we've wrapped up the architectural issues, so I would like to have either staff or the applicant speak to the construction and construction timing and their contact information, that sort of thing. So, take it back.
Yeah, sure. So I wanted to reiterate, obviously, what some of the commissioners have already pointed out about there being a liaison. There's an entire condition in the staff attached to the staff report that will deal with this, and they're the go-to contact for any concerns or questions that there is about construction. I would also just add that there's a countywide noise ordinance that sets parameters and time limits on when construction activity can occur and sets decibel thresholds, et cetera. Those hours are actually codified also in the site plan ordinance that the applicant agrees to. I believe it's hours of construction, I believe, are 7 to 9 on weekdays and 9 to 9 on weekends. And so, we certainly understand the concern, and the county obviously does enforce the noise ordinance. And I guess I would also just defer to the applicant in any terms of specific measures that they're going to be taking with regard to minimizing the impacts of construction.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Watson. Again, this is Robert Vaughn with JBG Smith. We will be issuing monthly updates, not only to the 3 civic associations, but also through the BIDS website. We are scheduling a community meeting with the residents of Crystal Plaza Apartments with the ownership of that building for later this month. And we anticipate to fall into a regular cadence, whether that's monthly or bi-monthly, depending on the nature of the construction activities. We certainly want to make sure that everybody is apprised of upcoming operations that will be occurring on the construction site, revisions to wayfinding that will be occurring, and then also, when they can expect disruptions and how long the disruptions will go on. So we will have multiple resources that we'll be putting out, and these will be issued alongside the disruptions associated with the 1900 Crystal project, which has also recently just started construction.
Okay, great. So just to reiterate, there's a number of ways to reach out. In addition to your liaison, you will also, point of contact would be through Dweck, the owner of the apartment buildings, and the Crystal City Civic Association.
And the BID.
On that, maybe even the BID?
Yeah, the BID will also be posting construction updates to their website. And I think there's a mailing list that you can also get onto to be alerted when those updates are pushed out.
Great, thank you very much. Okay, we have gone through our discussion agenda. Are there any other items that we have not raised, or sort of the last call for questions or comments about this project from our commissioners? Hearing none, then Commissioner Weir, do you have some motions to offer?
I do. Let me pull them up, since I said that I would be going off of the recommended motions. I probably should have had them ready to go, but I didn't. Now I do. So this obviously comes in the form of a number of motions. I am just going to go through one by one, based off just off of the 5 recommended motions from the primary site plan, primary staff report, and then also we'll have 2 motions from the vacation related site plan report. So maybe we just go through them in seriatim, and that will.
Commissioner Weir, you seem to have lost you. Are you back? You're on mute. Still can't hear you.
Commissioner Weir, you are on mute.
Okay, should we carry on?
Well, we're really at the motion phase, so I really.
Can I just read the motions?
That'd be great. If
someone... Oh, here he comes. I'm letting him back in.
Okay, great.
Daniel?
Can people hear me now?
Yes.
There is a word, SERIATIM. It means to take things one after the other. There is also a certain Apple branded personal assistant that thinks that that word refers to it, and it took over my headset and caused all kinds of problems.
Yeah, we won't use that word then.
Yeah, so I won't refer to that particular personal assistant or that word. So my first motion is I move that the Planning Commission recommend that the County Board adopt the ordinance attached to the Crystal Plaza 1 staff report to rezone the property known as 2001 South Clark Street, RPC 34-020-266 part -267 -268 part -269 part from CO Mixed Use District to CO Crystal City Mixed Use Crystal City District.
Second.
And who was that who spoke up first?
Commissioner Schroll.
Thank you, Commissioner Schroll. Okay, the motion has been made and seconded. Do we have any discussion? Not seeing any, I will now proceed to the vote. Commissioner Weir.
Aye.
Commissioner Siegel.
Aye.
Commissioner Schroll.
Aye.
Commissioner Gearing.
Aye.
Commissioner Morton.
Aye.
Commissioner Patel.
Aye.
Commissioner Steinberger.
Aye.
Commissioner Bagley.
Aye.
Commissioner Peterson.
Aye.
Commissioner Sarley.
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. The motion is carried unanimously. Commissioner Weir, do you have a second motion?
I do. I move that the Planning Commission recommend that the County Board adopt the resolution attached to the Crystal Plaza 1 staff report for the Crystal City block plan for Block M, CCBP-M-1, dated April 5, 2021.
Second.
And that was Commissioner Schroll again?
Yes.
Thank you. It has been made and seconded. Do we have any discussion? Seeing none, I'll move on to a vote. Commissioner Weir.
Aye.
Commissioner Siegel.
Aye.
Commissioner Schroll.
Aye.
Commissioner Gearing.
Aye.
Commissioner Morton.
Aye.
Commissioner Patel.
Aye.
Commissioner Steinberg.
Aye.
Commissioner Bagley.
Aye.
Commissioner Peterson.
Aye.
Commissioner Sarley.
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. Motion's carried unanimously. Commissioner Weir, do you have a third motion?
I do. Excuse me. I move that the Planning Commission recommend that the County Board adopt the ordinance attached to the Crystal Plaza 1 staff report to amend site plan number 11 to remove 104,404 square feet of site area from the subject site plan located at 2001 and 2221 South Clark Street, 220 20th Street South, 2100 and 2200 Crystal Drive, 223 23rd Street South, and 2101 and 2111 Richmond Highway, RPC numbers 34020003, 34020017, -018, -255, -256, -257, -258, -265, -266, -267, -268, -269, with modifications of zoning ordinance requirements including permitting the existing density to be retained, reduced parking, and other modifications as necessary to achieve the proposed development plan, subject to all previously approved conditions and the revised and new conditions of the attached ordinance.
It is moved.
Second.
Commissioner Schroll again.
Yes.
Thank you. It has been moved and seconded. Do we have any discussion? Seeing no hands, I will move on to the vote. Commissioner Weir.
Aye.
Commissioner Siegel,
Aye.
Commissioner Swirl,
Aye.
Commissioner Gearing,
Aye.
Commissioner Morton,
Aye.
Commissioner Patel,
Aye.
Commissioner Steinberg,
Aye.
Commissioner Bagley,
Aye.
Commissioner Peterson,
Aye.
Commissioner Sarley,
Aye.
and I vote aye as well. And that is passed unanimously. Commissioner Weir, do you have a fourth motion?
I do. I move that the Planning Commission recommend that the County Board adopt the ordinance attached to the Crystal Plaza 1 staff report to amend phased development site plan number 454 to incorporate site plan number 5458 into the subject PDSP, covering 4 non-contiguous sites in Crystal City located at 2001 South Clark Street. I am going to skip over the RPC numbers. 101 12th Street South, 1900 Crystal Drive, and 223 23rd Street South. Subject to all previously approved conditions and the revised and new conditions of the attached ordinance.
Second.
Commissioner Stroll, second. It has been moved and passed, moved and seconded. Do we have any discussion? Seeing none, I move on to the vote. Commissioner Weir.
Aye.
Commissioner Siegel.
Aye.
Commissioner Swirl.
Aye.
Commissioner Gearing.
Aye.
Commissioner Morton.
Aye.
Commissioner Patel.
Aye.
Commissioner Steinberg.
Aye.
Commissioner Bagley.
Aye.
Commissioner Peterson.
Aye.
Commissioner Sarley.
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. The motion passes unanimously. Commissioner Weir, do you have a final and fifth motion?
I have a fifth motion. It is not final, however. I will have a sixth and seventh motion as well. I move that the Planning Commission recommend that the County Board adopt the ordinance attached to the Crystal Plaza 1 staff report for site plan number 458 to permit the construction of up to 6.9 FAR total density, including approximately 701,101 square feet of residential and approximately 22,250 square feet of commercial gross floor area located at 2001 South Clark Street, with modifications of zoning ordinance requirements, including additional density required, reduced parking ratios, increased compact parking ratio, bulk plane angle modification, tower separation modification, density exclusions, and other modifications as necessary to achieve the proposed development plan, subject to the conditions of the attached ordinance.
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Stroll. It's been moved and seconded. Do we have any discussion? Seeing none, I'll move on to the vote. Commissioner Weir.
Aye.
Commissioner Siegel.
Aye.
Commissioner Stroll.
Aye.
Commissioner Gearing.
Aye.
Commissioner Morton.
Aye.
Commissioner Patel.
Aye.
Commissioner Steinberg.
Aye.
Commissioner Bagley.
Aye.
Commissioner Peterson.
Aye.
Commissioner Sarley.
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. Moving on to our sixth motion.
So I actually, the next thing that we have to do, in fact, is a finding rather than a recommendation. Let me ask staff before I do this, though. After we do the finding, is the recommendation from staff that we also formally recommend the two county manager recommended motions, or is it sufficient for this to make the finding?
This is Linda Collier. It's just sufficient to make the finding. That's all you have to do to find that it's whether or not it's in substantial accord with the comprehensive plan.
Okay. Okay. And then if for whatever reason we end up being asked why we didn't act on the recommendations, then we'll just say that we made the finding and
yes.
And have
yes,
and that's that. Okay.
Yes, that's all that you need to do. Thank you.
Great. So then I actually only have a sixth motion. I move that the Planning Commission find that the vacation of a portion of an easement for public street purposes for South Clark Street running from 20th Street South parallel to the east side of Richmond Highway and on the west side of parcel A45, RPC number 34020-267, and 2, a portion of an easement for public street and utilities purposes for South Clark Street running west from Richmond Highway on the north side of parcel A45, RPC number 34020-267, both of the above with conditions. That doesn't seem right.
There a part is left out. You have to find that it's what you just read is substantially in accord with the comprehensive plan of Arlington County.
Okay, so unless anyone objects, I will move as I just stated, ending with both of the above with conditions are in substantial accord with the comprehensive plan of Arlington County.
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Schroll. Do we have any discussion? Seeing none, I'll move to the vote. Commissioner Weir.
Aye.
Commissioner Siegel.
Aye.
Commissioner Schroll.
Aye.
Commissioner Gearing.
Aye.
Commissioner Morton.
Aye.
Commissioner Patel.
Aye.
Commissioner Steinberger.
Aye.
Commissioner Bagley.
Aye.
Commissioner Peterson.
Aye.
Commissioner Sarley.
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. The motion passes unanimously. So we have no further motions. Is that correct, Commissioner Witt?
Unless staff tells us that we have neglected to act on any particular recommendation, we do not.
Okay, staff, is there anything we need further to do?
I think that covers it. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Okay, the matter for this is now, we have discussed, made the motions have all passed. That is now complete. For tonight, let's see. I want to thank staff, the applicants, and the members of the public for your time and consideration and patience. This item is expected to go to the county board on May 15th, and Planning Commissioner Gearing will be representing us at these county board hearings. Many staff labor to make tonight's meeting run smoothly, and I thank all of you, especially our clerk, Ms. Johnson, Joanne Harrison, SPRC Supervisor Pfeiffer, our technical wizard, David Wood, and others. We will be in recess until our meeting on Wednesday. On Wednesday, we will be hearing, we have two items. As I mentioned earlier, we have the Vernon Street duplex, which we will be considering, and we will also be having a discussion on the conversion of multifamily apartment units to hotel uses. That will be a discussion among the planning commissioners. Until then, I now declare our meeting in recess until Wednesday at 7 p.m. We're done. Thank you all.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone. Good